So I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but you just feel like I am tired. What's wrong with me? I feel exhausted. And if you're a woman between the ages of 45 and 60, you probably felt this way, where you just feel exhausted and you don't know what's happening to you. But the fact that you have low energy, you're exhausted, that is what we're going to talk about today. Why do women between the ages of 45 to 60 feel so exhausted and invisible? Like not just exhausted, but you feel like you're invisible to the rest of the world. So we're going to talk about that today. And if you're new here, my name is Janet, and this is the Second Act Collective. And I want to talk about first, let's look into the exhaustion, right? So it's snowing, it's been snowing where I am, and so yeah, I'm trying to drink as much tea as possible. I've got the heat in the house, but I still feel cold, and it's just been terrible, cold, freezing weather out there. Anyway, sorry, I digress. But um, let's talk about the exhaustion. The exhaustion we feel that no matter how much sleep you get, you feel like it's not enough. Like you wake up exhausted, you go to bed exhausted, you wake up exhausted, you have the 10 hours sleep and you feel exhausted. Why is that? Why are we waking up exhausted like that? And I know some of it has to do with, medical, your body going through stuff. And some people might be going through premenopause right now in their 40s. And some people might be in menopause in their 50s and 60s. So we're all in different places. But I also think the exhaustion is coming because of just the emotional overextension. You are, or you have spent, and still are spending a lot of time just anticipating other people's needs. And I see this in my own life. I have 3 kids. And if you haven't been to my channel, welcome. And I'm going to take a sip. And just tease out. Hot. But I kind of have to live my life right now with the stages where my kids are anticipating what their needs are, what they're gonna need emotionally, physically, school-wise, you name it, their future. There's always this thing about I'm thinking about them. I'm thinking a lot about them that I even think about myself. And trying to balance that. And it's a mental overload that you have to carry that I think a lot of fathers and men just don't. So you are also regulating other people's emotions. And this can cause some anger. And we're going to talk about this later on, like the bitterness and the frustration that comes with just constantly regulating other people's emotions, trying to balance their happiness, right? You're regulating your kids' emotions if you have kids. You're regulating your spouse if you have a spouse, yourself, your relatives, your in-laws, everybody. And you're trying to keep everything in balance and everybody happy. And that's, again, cause the emotional overload, the emotional tiredness that you feel. So your body is kind of reacting to the emotional overload that is happening in your own emotions and feelings, and it's coming out as just exhaustion a lot of times, and you don't know why, right? Like I try to work out 4 or 5 times a week, and sometimes like, why I'm working out, I eat healthy, why do I still feel tired? And then you realize it's a lot of emotional and mental stuff going on, all the things, the schedules and the planning, running a household. um, the second business that I just started, this new business that I'm in, that I'm working on, is just something, always something that you're doing. So you are handling and trying to accommodate other people's emotions in your life. You are going through your own stuff, health-wise, that you're dealing with. And all this just makes you feel exhausted. You are trying to not look like you're selfish. So you don't tend to yourself because you don't want to look like you care about yourself too much more than others. And that what happens is you end up forgetting yourself a lot of times. So you're pushing through the discomfort, you're surviving through life, and you've been surviving through life for so many years, trying to push through and get things done and get the life and build the business and build the career, all this stuff that can emotionally just drain you. And so at the end, you hit 45, 46, approaching 50, you are exhausted, you're just tired. And I want you to know, just as I'm learning about this, as I'm going through this too, that, it's not necessarily the physical things that we're doing that are making us tired. It's really the mental and the emotional stuff that we're carrying that is making us exhausted. And then comes the other thing. And so we talked about the exhaustion. Uh, the fact that we are going through a period in our time, in our lives, where we are the sandwich generation, right? The Gen X. And I think the women suffer the most here because we tend to be invisible. I remember talking to my daughter about, I don't know, she's getting ready to go to college in a year or so. And we're talking, and I just saying, sometimes I just feel like I'm there and I'm just there, but I'm not really there. She's like, yeah, mommy, you're always there. You're just there. You're like the steady thing in the background that is stable, and we know you're there. But she's like, I know sometimes you don't pay attention to you. And I said, that's it. That's exactly why sometimes I feel invisible. Not just my kids, but you feel invisible in the workplace. You feel invisible in the business arena when you're doing business. You feel, because you're in this age, and my daughter put it this way, she's like, yeah, your generation is kind of the forgotten generation. It's like people don't really talk about your generation. It's like people talk about the millennials, they talk about, the Gen Zs or whatever, or the boomers, people who are old. So it's like everybody's talking about all these other generations, and nobody's actually talking about the Generation X, because we are just there taking care of things and making sure this machine we call life, or our lives, is working while everybody else is getting the attention. We are not. We are just the steady humming thing in the background that is doing all the things that it needs to do to make everybody else's life work. And so we're invisible, and it does hurt, right? To feel invisible, it hurts. And you are having a conversation and people interrupt you because they tend to think what you say doesn't matter. Your experiences are dismissed as if what you feel and what you're going through doesn't matter. You're only noticed when something is needed. Like, you're only important when people need something. Otherwise, you're kind of on the sideline over there. You're just the thing or the person on the side, and nobody pays attention to you. And this is not about us wanting attention. It's the fact that we can actually acknowledge that we are being ignored. We've become invisible because we are not, like I said in my other video, we're not too old to be given attention that like the old people get, or the respect that they get. We're also not too young to be noticed because of our looks and our bodies and how we, whatever. So you're just in this in-between generation where you are practically not there until somebody needs something. And why is this happening? Because for years, we've done things. We've handled situations. We've taken care of things. We've taken care of people. We have proved to the world how capable we are. We are so capable that they've now just assumed we're the machine in the background and they can ignore us. That's kind of how we've, made people look at us, is that we are so capable. And we can handle anything so much that we can just be the humming in the background that you only check on when something is wrong. You're needed when something is wrong. You're needed when something is not. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate that I'm needed, that, I have people in my life that need, but you just become that, that steady thing in the background, and nobody really, nobody's paying attention to you. And not that we're screaming for attention, but it's like our needs and wants and desires are then put on the side, on the shelf, because everybody else's is more important. The younger people, their needs are important. The older people, we're taking care of their needs are important. So we're caught in between these generations, and we are the in between, and we are handling everything for two generations, and nobody's paying attention to us or handling anything for us. And that becomes a problem. And I think what we are not taught, or nobody prepares us for, is this generation, is the fact that we are there are all these scripts, right? There are all these hacks and frameworks for, being a young mother, and what that looks like, being young in your career, what that looks like, career building, self-improvement. And then for the, 60 and above, there is the aging gracefully. So what happened to the 45 and 60, the people, the women there? Because everybody else is focusing on these other different generations, and nobody has prepared us for what it's like culturally. There's no script for what it's like to be in this midlife that we're in, the things that we're dealing with, right? So your children don't need you that much, so you're not needed as much. The career sometimes has lost its meaning for you. It is plateaued. You're just going through the emotions, waiting for retirement. The business may not be what you thought it was going to be when you started it. So there are all these changes you're going through. Your parents are declining, family members are getting old. So there's a lot of attention you're giving to that. Your body is demanding something because you're going through your own changes in your body. You have to have all these tests. Oh boy, do you have to have tests when you turn 45? But oh my gosh, so many. And I'm thankful, very grateful that we get to have the test so that, we can know ahead of time if something is wrong. Very grateful for it. But it's just there are so many of them. I didn't know I had to do this stuff when I was 45, and once you turn 45. So your body's making changes, and, the doctors are telling you about all the possible things that can happen in menopause, and oh boy, all that stuff. So you're going through all that. And there's no scripts for that. There's no discussions out there for that. I think now a lot of women are talking about menopause and what they're going through. Even celebrities like Halle Berry jumping into this and all that, which is good because they're making these discussions open to people. But we are all sitting in our homes at work in this discomfort, and we've internalized it, and we think, well, I guess everyone is handling this better than me. This feeling of being invisible, being ignored at work, being passed for promotion, or whatever we're going through. We just think, well, maybe I'm the one who's not handling this okay. Maybe everybody else is doing it okay. When a lot of us women in this age group, in this age bracket I just mentioned, 45 to 60, we are going through this. We are all going through this, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's coming up and saying, you need help, or how can we help? So what happens when we internalize these things, the discomfort, the unhappiness, the discontent, the feeling ignored, the emotional overload? What happens to us then? We start to have emotions that we're not even allowed to name. We carry resentment, a lot of us, bitterness. When we're going through broken relationships, and, a lot of times in that age group is where there's divorce, there's fractures in families, there's not to speak evil over anyone, but to just name the things that are happening. There's broken friendships, family dynamics are changing, your kids may be going to college, whatever. There's a lot of things going on. And these are emotions we have, but we're not allowed to name them. We're not allowed to talk about them. And so we start to grow this resentment inside of us. And it's not explosive anger, even though sometimes it can come out as a very explosive anger. But a lot of times it's just a slow simmering bitterness about the lives that we have and where we are, where we feel we have so much emotional baggage we're carrying for everybody. And on the other side, we feel very invisible, like people expect us to carry this for them and manage it all. And at the same time, we're totally ignored as if we're not there. And that combination in itself can create an area of bitterness. And then we start to be irritable. And again, people can say it's hormones and stuff. And yeah, I guess hormones have something to do with it. But a lot of it is all the stuff, the things, the emotional stuff going on. That at this stage of our lives, we're irritable because we're not very happy. We have this discontent within us. We start to withdraw. We don't want to participate in things that we used to. We have just a numbness. We're just going through the emotions, going through life. And we feel guilty for feeling ungrateful because we're no longer happy with what we have, which is, oh, this is something. But, you can be content is to want more. And I think I said this in another video, but I think for women, we feel guilty when people perceive us for as being ungrateful just because we don't want what we used to have. Or we're not happy with what we used to have. We're not happy with the relationship. We're not happy with uh attending functions I don't really want to attend, or being forced to go somewhere. You're not happy with going to a work thing that you don't want. You're not happy with the job that you thought you were going to be your forever job. You're not happy with the home that you thought was going to be your forever home. You're not happy with whatever that thing you're not happy with. And we tend to feel guilty because then we don't want to look ungrateful, yet we are really unhappy about it. So there's a resentment, there's bitterness, there's, I don't know, there's a lot of things going on. And we are not, the problem is that resentment even tends to inward towards us, not necessarily to people, but we get angry at ourselves. We have a lot of regrets. We start to ask ourselves, like, what's wrong with me? Instead of asking, why am I giving so much? We turn everything inside and turn on ourselves, which is worse and damaging. And we wonder, why do we feel this way? We hate the way we feel, but we continue to feel it and we don't know what to do with it. And I think, for me as a Christian, these are things that I've really had to bring before God and have him examine and show me what's going on, because you're like, I don't understand why I feel this way. I should be grateful. I should be happy. And I am grateful, but I still feel this way. Why do I feel that way? Right. So beneath all this stuff, beneath the exhaustion, there's also the identity shift that is happening as you're getting into your late 40s, moving, to your 50s and 60s. There's an invisible identity shift that is happening in midlife that I feel like is not talked about a lot. That, your responsibility have shifted, your values have shifted, your roles have shifted, they've changed, and maybe you're not needed as much as you used to. Maybe you don't, again, ambition might not be a thing for you. You might not want the thing that you used to pursue. You don't have the energy, you don't have the desire. So there's all these things that you are dealing with inside, in the inner you, that are happening inside, while the exhaustion and everything else, the invisibility, is happening outside. So we are dealing with these identity shifts, and it's not easy. It is not easy. We were once defined by certain things. Our identity was once attached to certain things, and it no longer is. Maybe the roles we played, they're no longer there. The kids have grown, or the relationship has ended, or whatever, and that role that you used to play, you're no longer playing it. So all these things are not discussed, right? They're not talked about, yet it's happening. So it ends with the exhaustion that we feel, to the overwhelm that we might feel. And so what also tends to happen during this time is that the loneliness, and I do have a video on why we feel lonely. But there's a loneliness that happens then, because you're going through stuff that is not shared, that people are not talking about. You feeling invisible, yet you're grieving. Maybe you're in transition from one thing, the career, to something else, or the career to really nothing else, because you don't want to do anything anymore. You are grieving the transition from maybe a business to a different business, or whatever you're transitioning from into, there's always a grieving that is happening, and you are feeling like you've lost time, maybe, maybe financially you're not where you're supposed to be. There's a grieving that is happening with that. You're grieving the fact that you're not able to express yourself fully, right? That people just know different parts of you. And also just the realization that maybe I don't want to live this way anymore. And that loss, right? That loss is real. Is real, even if you can grieve something that you probably know you should not continue being in. You can grieve a relationship even though it was time for it to end. You can grieve a relationship, even a friendship, even if you know that it was time to end that friendship. That doesn't stop your heart from grieving what things used to be, right? How we deal with that grief is something else, but we go through these things that we are grieving. So it's a very, can be lonely because you're not able to share that with your family, with your friends, with those who are close to you. This is just an internal thing that you're going through that you cannot express, that you don't think anyone can understand, and you're in it by yourself. So, at this stage, we are just admitting the things that we are going through. And, when you're going through all this, it's not also the place to try to fix things. What we really need is validation. What you need is the language, the permission. So we're not trying to fix. We're not always trying to fix things or what can be done better. We're not a productivity guru thingy. We can just say, let's validate this. We are going through this. Let's put a name to it. Let's talk about it. Let's give ourselves permission to say this is what we feel, and be okay with just that, without trying to fix things. Because this is not, when you're going through all this, it's not the end. And I think it's important to know that it's not the end. The loneliness, the exhaustion, the invisibility, all the things that we feel, being ignored, our opinions not mattering so much, not maybe being as powerful as we used to be in the corporate setting that we are, or the business setting that we are. This is not a stage of decline. You are not declining, you're not lessening. It's just a threshold. And the exhaustion is a signal. The invisibility is a wake-up call. All the things that you're feeling, which are valid, which are true, and they're simply signaling that we are in a place where we are transitioning. We have outgrown some things. We have become different people than who we used to be, or even who people told us we had to be. We are not done. You are not done. But maybe you are just done with the life that you used to have. Maybe you're done with the relationships you used to have. Maybe you're done with the career, the business that you used to have. But you yourself are not done. You are simply at a threshold of something else, something new, something different. And being able to talk about that, being able to say, this is what I'm going through. I do feel invisible. I feel exhausted, mentally, emotionally, physically. I feel exhausted. And learning to ask different questions, because these things are not going to be fixed in one day or in me just talking to you right here. But what are the questions we can ask that could help us move past the exhaustion, move past the lack of being seen? Is that we can ask, how do I get my energy back? What is the things that I can do to get my energy back? What am I still carrying that I shouldn't carry emotionally? Because you're not to be people's emotional garbage can or dumpster, right? And we tend to do that a lot of times. So what are the questions we can ask, right? Just different questions like, what am I carrying? What stuff am I carrying that I shouldn't carry? The things that only God should carry for people, not us. Yet as women, I think we tend to, the older we get, we tend to fix everybody's problem. We want to be there for everybody. And sometimes they're just things that God should carry. for people and help them and not us. When we're asking different questions because we are trying to just reflect on, or as the changes are happening, right? We have to reflect on our lives, reflect on where we want things to go, reflect on how we want things to feel and to be. And the questions do not need an immediate answer. They don't need you to answer that today. I think you want to ask them and chew on them and think on them, and they don't necessarily have to be answered right there and there. But it's simply starting to ask different things, and also asking ourselves, what is it that we want? What is it that God wants for us? What is that version of us that we want to get into, where we are not invisible, where we don't feel invisible, where we don't feel like we've been put on a shelf just because we're this generation X. What is it, that we want and desire? Because that matters. God cares about what you want and desire. And us also getting to know what is it that God has for us in this new chapter we're in, this second act we're in. Even though people might be ignoring us, what is it that He has for us? So we are starting to reclaim so that we can be free, to liberate ourselves from the exhaustion, mental exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, from being invisible. But we have to ask the questions to ourselves. We have to also be able to tell people in our lives the things that we want without justification, without being apologetic about it, but simply stating, no, that I'm not going to do that. No, this is not what I want. This is important to me. This matters to me. So this is where I want to leave you with this. If you are going through this where you're feeling invisible, share in the comments. If you're feeling like you're exhausted, share in the comments. Whatever you're going through in this stage, I would like you to share in the comments and let us know so we can talk and just get to know what we as women in this Gen X, in this Gen X generation, what we're all going through, and have those open discussion. I look forward to seeing your comments. And again, my name is Janet, and this is the Second Act Collective. I'll talk to you soon.